Thank you, Dr. Courier, for that fantastic talk. And I apologize for the technical difficulties and cutting your Q&A time short. I know there's already a few questions, and hopefully people can upload more questions. We'll still have to end at the hour, but we can at least get through some of the interesting questions. Russ Tracy mentioned, first he said outstanding talk, and then said, in your career, how important have institutional venues been? Things like mentoring committees, seminars on career development, and things put on by your home institution.
Well, thank you, Russ, for that comment and the question. And I think looking back on my own career, there weren't a lot of mentoring committees and other structured activities to sort of help. And so I didn't really get to take advantage of that. But I do see the value of those activities now, and I see much more emphasis being placed on how we're doing mentoring and how to train people to be mentors. One particularly phenomenal program is the one that Monica Gandhi led through the CFAR at UCSF, which not just doesn't always, I mean, mentoring has always been focused on the mentees, but this is focused on the mentors and really getting people to learn how to be mentors because no one teaches you that during your career development. So I think that the emphasis on integrating this into institutions is going to go a long way to help people. So thank you for that question.
Brienne Oliveira Muiz asks, in the current climate of dwindling funding and ageism, do you feel that opportunities for HIV research are becoming more difficult? And are there certain foundations that you've had more success with in terms of funding?
Yeah, this is a really great question and an important point, which I'm sure will be discussed throughout this workshop. But the dwindling funding and lack of focus on aging specifically with HIV is a concern. And I think it's also a concern about how siloed the approach has been across different areas. So people that are focused on cardiology or on neurology or mental health, these things are all sort of divided apart, where I think we need to really be focused on aging more broadly and multi-morbidity. And so partnering with organizations and groups that are focused on aging and including HIV as a prominent part of that agenda, I think is an important strategy that we all need to work on together. I wish I had better, some insights or tips to share, but I think that we do need to broaden the places that we look to support this really important area of research.
I think that question overlaps a bit with Jules' question on what are some of the approaches to studying aging and comorbidities within the AIDS Clinical Trials Network?
Yeah, I mean, this is a topic that we talk a lot about with Jules, and I appreciate the advocacy and the emphasis on this. And what we've been really trying to work on is how to work across the institutes at NIH. There was a workshop a year ago, I think last week, that was focused on comorbidities and identified just this key point about the fact that if you're trying to study multi-morbidity, no one institute is going to own that. And so how we can bring people together to support and prioritize this research remains a really critical point. I saw just today they released an RFA from Heart, Lung, and Blood on syndemics and heart, lung, and blood disease in people with HIV. And that is a direct result from that meeting that occurred, the workshop that occurred last year. We're working within the ACTG to come up with some new approaches to partnership with other institutes to get more streamlined how investigators will get funding. We recently have had some success getting funding for a study of Senecriviroc in HIV, but there's certainly much more that can be done, and we need to pave these roads so they're more clear and that this kind of work can proceed more rapidly. So certainly agree that we could be and should be doing more, and we need to figure out how to get it funded.
You mentioned that some of these networks, such as the ACTG or the Multicenter AIDS, or that MAX and WISE can be great resources for junior investigators. Do you have suggestions for how junior investigators can get involved in these networks, particularly if they're not a site for investigation?
Yeah, this is a great question because these are kind of virtual networks and people are spread all over the place and now more so than ever since we don't meet in person. So I think the first thing is to identify what it is that you're interested in, and then think about where they might have samples or data that you could use, and then identify somebody who's involved in the network who's played a role in that kind of work, either leading or being a part of a team that's done some work on this area. And this is where being able to go to a conference and go up to their poster or ask a question after the talk to say, I'm really interested in this. Do you think there's any data? And then that can begin the process of submitting a concept sheet for secondary data analysis or identifying samples that you might be able to use where you could identify resources for some outside funding through like a seed grant. I think seed grants are a tremendous resource for jumpstarting novel ideas and new investigators working, pairing with an established person and then leveraging the resources of some of these networks and cohorts.
You mentioned in your talk that sometimes it's hard to focus on a certain topic. There's so many things that are interesting, and it's hard to necessarily narrow things down, even though that's often the advice that junior investigators get. And I guess I ask, is that really, do you think that really is the best approach to focus on a single topic? Or is it nice to kind of have your research interests in slightly different areas in case maybe one doesn't pan out, or you're focused on some vitamin that later doesn't have any significance? It is hard to focus on one thing, especially I think for junior investigators who are really excited and interested in lots of different areas.
Yeah, I think it's a really great question, and I think people probably have different advice about this. I mean, I feel like you have to have some area where some umbrella that ties together what you're doing. And I think sometimes people can have projects that are in different stages of development, but some theme that wraps it together kind of helps you to um, develop expertise. It gets very hard to keep up on the literature if you're spread across so many different topics, but kind of finding the core that weaves them together. And sometimes opportunities come up to participate in something that's a little afield from what you're doing, and you just can't pass it up. So I don't think there's any one right answer, but I think at the end of the day, if you get too scattered, you may end up not really getting any momentum in any one area. And so I'm probably the worst person to ask about that because I have not been tremendously focused for much of my career.
Not followed your own advice. It's sort of a related but a topical question would be, what about junior investigators interested in COVID? And I think it was a large distraction, obviously, in the spring, and people really wanted to get involved. And do you think that's a good decision? Does it depend on the project? Do you have any advice for folks who kind of interested in COVID?
Yeah, this I've been thinking about this a lot, and it's been obviously on our minds just every day. And the young investigators that I work with at UCLA who've gotten involved, jumped in and gotten involved in COVID projects, who are trying to figure out, how far down that path they should go. And I think about, I mean, COVID's not a chronic disease like HIV, but I feel like there are opportunities now to contribute to improving our understanding of a new disease. And I feel like that is worth taking the time to do. We have learned so much in such a short period of time, and we have a lot more to learn now. I think that COVID, whether it's this virus or other ones, are going to be with us for a while. So I think it is I think it is worthwhile. If there's an opportunity to make a difference with something right now, I would not pass that up. Um, so
And I think we're just about on the hour. One quick question that you can probably give a one-word answer to, although it may require a little bit more explanation. But what do you think? Switching gears a little bit, what do you think is one of the most important characteristics of a mentor? So, what do you look for if you're a junior investigator? What are some of the most important things that you'd seek out when looking for a mentor?
Yeah, I don't think that's a one word answer, but I think clearly you want somebody who is going to invest in you and is also going to help you develop your own career. I used to uh, my stepfather said to me once, was talking about a mentor situation a long time ago, early in my career, about this person wants you to walk their dog and you need to figure out how to walk your own dog. So I think you want to find somebody who's going to let you walk your own dog.
That's a great explanation. But um, well, apologize again for cutting your Q&A session a little bit short. But we really appreciate your time and providing a great overview of kind of your research trajectory as a role model for many of our young investigators and older investigators. So thank you again for your time. Following this session, we will break out into 4 discussion groups that we called Meet the Expert groups. And these are an opportunity for junior investigators or anyone really to join a smaller group discussion, kind of that lobby discussion that we're missing by having a virtual meeting. So we encourage you to join those groups, meet some people that might have some similar interests. There's not a strict agenda, it's just an opportunity to talk a little bit more and try to have a little bit more of that interaction. And then we'll move into some of our plenary sessions following that. So thank you again.
Thank you.